Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is my first live, in-person interview. I happen to be at the TechBash conference in Poconos Mountains,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
The town, I think, is Mount Pocono.
Mount Pocono?
Yeah.
Okay, so close enough.
Yeah.
I just
Closest
tell
town.
everyone Poconos,
Yeah.
and they think, oh, is it like in the 1950s when everyone would drive upstate to all the different resorts and stuff? So I'm here. I'm doing two talks. I'm joined by, I didn't even introduce you. I'm so rude. Alvin Ashcraft, one of the organizers of TechBash. So I'm so glad to get a moment to sit down with you. And the reason we're talking to Alvin is because in good multi-thread income essence, Alvin just released a book. And so let's start with the book now. This is
Okay.
not your only book, right?
No, this is technically my third book. It's the second edition of my first book, though.
Okay, that still counts.
Yeah.
You had to do work on it.
Right.
All right. So what's the name of your new book?
So the new book is Learn When UI 3, and it's second edition of that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So second edition. What was your other book? That's not a.
The other one that's not part of that is Parallel Programming and Currency with C# 10 and .NET 6.
Okay.
It's quite a mouthful.
All right. Yeah. You read that off the bestseller list.
Yeah.
So Alvin, I really wanted to talk to you about just how do you get started even writing a book? So let's go back, I guess, to your first book.
Okay.
How do you make that decision? Does someone call you? Do you reach out to someone? How do you even start that conversation?
So that started with the publisher, Packt Publishing. I had done a bunch of tech reviews for them on different .NET related books. I think 8 different titles that I tech reviewed before I wrote the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came to me with the WinUI idea and thought that's right up my alley. I've done XAML development since WPF in 2006. So I thought something I could do without too much trouble or too much research.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How much, let's talk about kind of the timeline from you're talking to the publisher,
Right.
You both agree on the topic, you have that much. What's your first initial step once you know what your topic is going to be?
So the first step is creating the outline. What are the chapters going to be? You have to create the sections within the chapters. Then they go through, they approve that and come up with a schedule. And then we go through and say, I'm going to be on vacation all these days. You tweak the schedule and then start working.
Is the schedule pretty firm or is there a lot of flexibility in the schedule?
There's some flexibility. You try to build in as much buffer you can with, the days off you think you might have, and then you can talk to them when other things come up.
Okay, so let's dig down kind of in the schedule. If so you work a full-time job.
Yes.
You want to tell us what you currently do?
Yes. So I work at Microsoft. I joined them March of last year, 2022, and I work on Microsoft Learn, the documentation and training website. I work in the Windows developer docs. So I work on API docs, longer form documentation, training module.
So taking your day job, basically creating documentation,
right?
And now you're writing a book, which is just more documentation.
Right.
How do you kind of judge your time between working on your day job and then working on the book? Do you have it very siloed?
I do.
Or do you kind of do it at the same time?
Yeah. So the book writing, anything that I'm writing from scratch, I always did on the weekends. So I would just set aside usually the morning hours on the weekends to work on that. If there were edits, rewrites to do, those I could sometimes work in the evenings, but tried to keep that mostly on the weekend.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So all in all, let's kind of start from, you start writing the book, you're working on weekends.
Yeah.
About how long are you spending on just the writing phase of the book?
The first edition of the book, I'd say we started in late January and wrapped up in late September. So,
okay.
Yeah, good amount of time.
That's, is it a milestone per chapter? Or is it a couple chapters?
Yeah, so every chapter would be a milestone. They have a date for the first draft of the chapter and a final draft of the chapter. Those kind of get staggered in throughout the year.
So September comes and goes. What's the next step after that?
So after all there's the tech review steps that are kind of happening in between. So after I finish the first draft,
Okay.
they send it off to a tech reviewer. He goes through it, and then they send it back with the suggested edits. I make those.
So that's all kind of happening as you're writing the other chapters.
Yeah, kind of in
Someone's
parallel.
reviewing.
So maybe I'm working on chapter 3 writing. I get chapter 1 back with the edit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when we get to September, there's really not that many steps left before
No,
it's ready for publish.
It's kind of a final pass of the chapter to make sure nothing's changed, which happens a lot.
When you're dealing with something like, well, Microsoft is fairly cutting edge.
Yeah.
UI, it's,
Yeah, the Win UI with the first edition, I was working on the entire thing while it was in pre-release.
Mm-hmm.
So the book published within a couple weeks of when the product shipped. So things changed at the very last minute.
As you're writing the book,
Yeah.
do you ever get a sense of imposter syndrome? Like I look at a book and the amount of content in some of these books,
Right.
and I feel like I only know half of it. And that's not even working with something that's in development at the
Right.
time. How much do you really have to spend learning as you go writing one of these books?
Yeah, absolutely. That's with Win UI, it was brand new. So I was learning as I went, and try to find documentation out there or any other people that are working with it. And, Stack Overflow is a great resource for working through issues.
Do you have a benefit working for Microsoft that you could reach out to members of the team and say,
yeah, with the second edition, I could definitely do that. The first edition was before I joined Microsoft, which actually was interesting. It helped me almost kind of get the job, at least get the foot in the door.
Yeah.
The manager who ended up hiring me saw my book and messaged me on Twitter to see if I wanted to interview for the position on his team.
Now, I think a lot of people are wondering, like this is multi-threaded income, and they're obviously very interested in the income.
Mhm.
And we're not going to talk numbers or anything like that because that's different for everyone. And actually, we'll come back. I have a couple follow-up questions to that regard. But being paid for a book, obviously, there's a lot of time and effort put in initially to write the book.
Right.
We were talking, 9 months
Yeah.
of just nights and weekends working on content, doing revisions. What's the deal look like nowadays? Do you get paid anything up front? Do you just get a better deal on royalties on the long term?
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit to that?
Sure. So in the initial contract, when you're working out the outline kind of at the same time, there's a percent that you agree upon for the sale, and then you get some upfront money with that. And then, so you have that upfront chunk, and then after the book is published, you start earning that percent, and then that goes against the royalties that you were prepaid.
Okay, so you kind of have to earn back your initial
so
payment.
It was almost a year before I started getting any actual checks after that.
Is a book like Win UI, so this is your second edition,
Mm-hmm.
is it the sort of thing where you have a perceived lifetime value for how much you think you're going to earn on that before no one's caring about Win UI in its current form?
Right. Yeah, it's hard to predict, and I don't really have any projections of where I think it might go.
You just kind of hope that they come back to you and say, hey, would you like to do a third revision?
Right. Or I hope that it lives long enough that they don't need a third edition for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get a right of first refusal for a third edition, or is that something that they can just shop out to anyone?
They could probably shop out to anyone, but there's nothing in the contract that gives me that.
Okay. Kind of following up on the conversation of royalties and like upfront value.
Mm-hmm.
I've always heard it's a good idea to get a book agent specifically for this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But that recommendation I heard 10 years ago. So I don't know if that's something that's still current.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that at all. I'm not sure.
Maybe for the future.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I get a better deal.
We've talked about like the monetary things with writing a book.
Right.
What about all the other reasons you write a book? Because they always say you don't write a book for the money.
No,
so
not.
But there's other reasons you write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk some more about how has writing a book helped you professionally?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's gotten my name out more. A lot of people on social media knew me through my blog and other things, but it's just another kind of piece of building that, the name out there. And like I mentioned, my boss reached out to me because he saw the book out there and thought it might be a good fit for the team. If I could write a book about something, I could probably write the docs about it.
So let's build on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wrote a book on a Microsoft technology.
Mhm.
Someone at Microsoft reached out to you and said, "Hey, I read your book. We are hiring for our team at Microsoft, and we think you'd be a good fit for it." And this is just me speculating, but I assume your interview process is probably a lot easier than someone who's just randomly applying for that job through the job boards. Because
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been through other interview processes without the book, so.
well, I don't
But
recommend it. You got the book, so
yeah,
you might as well do it the way you did it.
yeah.
So you've released the book. It's gone through tech editing. How just my curiosity, how are tech editors found in these sort of cases?
In my case, I recommended them. There were people that I knew that kind of technology, so I gave them a set of names. They reached out and tried to find out who was interested.
Are tech editors compensated, or is that I just love Alvin so much, I'm going to review his book and find all the issues?
Right. You get, there's no payment. You get a free book and they give you some subscription to, the Packt website where you
Okay.
can read stuff for free.
Have all your books been through Packt Publishing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I'm not going to take up more of your time, Alvin. I think it's been really enlightening. I like talking to authors and people who create things. And you hit on a lot of points that we talked about in other episodes. And one in particular was you almost used the term, but the term we use is stacking the bricks.
Mhm.
So like career-wise, every little thing you do is just building another brick in the wall of what your career of your brand.
Right. The blog,
Yeah.
TechBash, the book.
Yeah, it all adds up. So even though like you're not going to retire off of book income, you're still stacking those bricks, and that might lead to another opportunity like a job at Microsoft.
Right.
And so, all right, Alvin, thank you so much
All
for
right,
hanging out
thanks,
with
Kevin.
me. I appreciate it.
Been good.
Thanks for listening to the Multithreaded Income Podcast. I've been your host, Kevin Griffin. Please reach out to us on social media at MT Income, wherever you get your socials from. And feel free to join one of our upcoming challenges at multithreadedincome.com. We'll see you next time.